Hi, everybody. I'm Dave,
I'm John.
and this is Coffee and Capes, our podcast about two of our favorite things, drinking coffee and talking about geek culture, especially comic book centered geek culture.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about coffee and we're going to talk about a comic book movie. We're talking about
Nice.
Shazam today. Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods.
Yes. Yes, we are.
But first, we like to remind you of all the ways that you can connect with us because there's a bunch.
There are a few. So you guys can find us on social. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're on Twitter. We're all over the place. Coffee underscore the letter N underscore capes, or take the underscores out. It's coffee and capes. We're online at our website, coffee, the letter N, the word capes.com, or you can just go into your URL browser, type comics.coffee. Same thing happens, takes you where you need to go.
Comics.coffee is my favorite way to get to us.
Yeah.
It's just fun to type in. It feels good when you type that in.
Yeah.
Like
And then
.coffee. It's just so cool.
We're on all your podcast ingesting devices or locations, Spotify, iTunes, all those things. Yeah. And if you want to drop us an email, you can send us an email to supers, SUPERS, at coffee, the letter N, the word capes.com. And we'll take time to respond.
We will. We love getting notes and about anything, but especially responding to our podcast here. It's great. We'll get to that in a second. Let's talk about some coffee. I'm drinking some Empire's Roast this morning.
Well, it was just St. Patrick's Day, so we're going to talk about one of our flavored roasts, Ivy's Elixir.
There you go.
Yeah, Ivy's Elixir. The reason we talk about this is it's got a stout Irish cream with sweet caramel flavor. People seem to really like this one as well. All of our flavored coffees are really good, actually.
Yeah, I'm not really a huge flavored coffee person, but ours are good.
Yeah,
I enjoy them.
The Logan's Barrel Age is good. That one's, aged in a whiskey barrel.
Yeah.
Harlene's Delight's got a little bit of, I guess, Jamaican flavor style to it. Little tropical flavor to it.
Yeah.
We even have some pumpkin spice still hanging around. So anyway,
pumpkin spice season again before you know it.
It'll take its time.
Okay. Okay, but Ivy's Elixir is really good too, and it's got Ivy's a little ice cream. It's not, obviously, some of these flavors sound alcoholic. There's no alcohol,
right?
Of any kind in any of these
They're
stuff.
alcohol-free, gluten-free, and sugar-free, so you can enjoy them. And then, yeah, it's made from a premium Colombian bean, so it is a premium coffee, just like all of our coffees are. That's why small batch coffee costs more. It's usually it's a little harder to get, a little bit more ethically sourced. Not saying that big coffee roasters don't source ethically, but it's one of the things that does make small batch coffee a little bit more expensive, is the longer process it takes to get to a brew being completed. So if you've ever wondered, and don't forget, all of our coffee comes with a new run comic now. So you get the full joyful experience. You can read a comic, you could give it away, you can donate it to a library, do whatever. Like, honestly, just pass the love of comics along if you're not a comic fan, or discover it all on your own.
Yeah. All the options available to you.
All the options.
Exactly. Excellent. So if if you're interested in trying some of our coffee, coffeeandcapes.com or comics.coffee.
Yeah.
And check it out. Great. Thanks so much.
So next on the agenda
is what we have gotten to call fan fiction, where we react to, or we, respond or read out some of your reactions to what we're doing. And this one actually comes from my cousin Steve, who was listening to our episode where we were kind of comparing and contrasting Black Adam and Black Panther Wakanda Forever. And just a couple of things that he said, like, we were talking about how Black Panther has 4 powerful women, and his daughter, who's a college student, was so pumped about seeing strong women characters on screen. She loved that. Um, and said they saw that in the theater, and he really liked it, and Emily loved it, and Black Adam not so much. She's like, I turned it off halfway through, like it just didn't really grab me. But a couple weeks later, I finished it, and the second half was better. He said this may be in part because I've never read anything Black Adam comics. So
Fair
I
enough.
think there's some truth. Yeah, exactly. We've been talking about how there's some um fatigue around comic book movies, and how there's a lot of homework if you're if you really want to like kind of dive in and make all the connections, and that can be daunting for folks. So
Yeah.
just some nice affirmation there about movies we liked, and just about the kind of trends we're seeing.
Great. Yeah.
And Emily, if you ever listen, I'm glad that you like Black Panther, and that we got some strong women for you on screen. That was great. Well, not that we did, but that there were.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So that brings us to, speaking of doing homework and fatigue and all of that jazz, Shazam, Fury of the Gods came out over the weekend.
Yes.
We went and saw it. It has,
and the theater did not fall down on top of us.
the theater did not. We went to a different theater.
Yeah.
It was not the best.
No.
We should start reviewing theaters we go to as well.
We should do that. I like that idea.
Yeah, we should, but we're not going to start with this one.
No.
This movie has not been well received critically. Big surprise. Like we've talked about before, the critics are probably tired of superhero movies. I mean, Marvel's given us what, 31, 32, you
31 movies, yeah.
31 movies over the last decade? Yeah.
Yeah, a little basically. More than, right? Yeah.
Right. So basically years, over the last
15 years.
Yeah, over the last decade or so. And DC's had their attempts at giving us movies. We've had Batman's such a well-known property though that only Joel Schumacher can screw that up. But so Shazam, right, is definitely, I think, a victim of that fatigue. Whereas Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania was a stretch, and to your point, you had to be in the lore of comic books. Like we were talking about this with Daryl yesterday.
Yeah.
Daryl, we're all in kind of in agreement that like to understand what's happening with Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania and some of the other stuff that's going on with Marvel right now, you have to have a rich history of kind of Marvel, because you need to understand that like what they're doing is they're moving off world for much larger galactic threats so they can expand the Marvel universe some more, and then they'll bring it back to Earth where it will pose a very real threat to a community that we can associate with. But if you don't know that, if you're not attuned to that, if you don't have a history of reading for that, it looks disjointed and can be odd and jarring, I think.
Sure. You're like, what are we doing here? Like what's going on? Why
what's the point? What's the point of what's happening?
Yeah.
And I think that now critics, as you and I kind of talked about after watching Shazam, critics are hypercritical of these movies now because they're film people, right? They love to see drama, they love to see comedies, they love to see pushing creative envelopes emotionally. Those kinds of those things come to life in film. And while there's definitely like emotional twists and turns inside of superhero movies, for sure there were in Shazam too.
Yes.
It's not the same, and they're just like, oh, it's the superhero thing again, and I'm tired of the superhero thing, so I'm going to give it a crappy rating and hope that, and I don't know that this is the case, but I'm making an assumption, I'm going to give it a crappy rating and hope that like nobody will go see it, it'll tank, and maybe we'll start getting less of these things.
Yeah, I don't know if any critics actually like, oh, I hope this will tank, but there's undeniably fatigue out there. And like, for instance, I forget who it was from the Chicago Tribune that reviewed it, Shazam. But the one thing that stood out at me, they give it a 1 star, and the one thing from the review that makes me scratch my head was they said, "Oh, there was only it tried to be funny, but it was never funny. The only one time it made me laugh was like the Chiron on the screen when they were showing Wolf Blitzer with the like CNN update. There's like one time there." And I that baffles me because you
Yeah.
and I laughed continuously throughout it.
Yep. It was humorous. It was funny. It was, it was really thoroughly enjoyable. I
Yeah,
liked this. I had a better time watching this than I had watching Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania for different reasons. Um, you know, I think it was for me the it felt more grounded,
sure.
right? And I loved Ant-Man and Wasp: Quantumania. Don't get me wrong. Like I thought that
Yeah,
was a really fun, enjoyable movie. I thought, this one just felt a little more grounded again in the, you know, because you it's in Philly and
right. It's in an actual place in a place they recognize. This is kind of that whole thing we were talking about after Ant-Man
right.
and Wasp, Quantumania, that you feel more grounded. You feel like you're in the real
Mhm.
world because you are.
Yes. And that helps with the connection, right? The emotional connection to the movie is helped out by that grounding piece of it. I enjoyed it more than Black Adam, and I enjoyed Black Adam. Like to me,
Yeah,
this was one of the better superhero movies that I've seen in the last year. Um, and I think part of that stemmed from, it just it didn't feel like it was trying to go super over the top at any point.
right.
It was very story driven. It wasn't as effects driven. There were definitely pieces of the story that felt like they could have been more important and then kind of tapered off and were lost.
Yeah.
But overall, like, I mean, I teared up a couple times
Yeah,
in the
right.
movie. Like,
Yes.
there were some emotional hits going on. I will say some of the special effects at times felt a little like, you know, Clash of the Titans.
Yeah, I think there's some of that going on. And I need to say our classic coffee and capes spoiler warning that we're pretty well not worrying about holding things back. So if you haven't seen the movie and don't want to have things spoiled, you should probably pause at this point and come back after you've seen the movie.
Yes, for sure. But yeah, there were some aspects of the special effects like I was like, meh, like that look. Come on, guys. The dragon being made out of wood was
At
an
least they
odd
whacked it.
choice.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that was an odd choice. And then they made a joke out of it, which was
Yes,
kind of fun.
which was awesome.
Yeah.
Like in a joke.
Yeah.
Wood, odd choice. Seems like a design
Yeah,
flaw.
weird flex, but okay. Yeah. I'll say this. I thought I might be alone in this, but I thought Zachary Levi was actually better in this movie than in the first one.
Yes, I would agree. But I will say this. I will say this, and I was thinking about this morning, and it is the one thing about Shazam and Billy Batson that in the movies, I have kind of an issue with. And that is that, especially in this one, Billy Batson, as in his child form, seems more grown up and more like kind of serious and in the way that he's viewing the world and emotionally like kind of there than Zachary Levi's Shazam does. Like for
Yeah, that's true.
some reason,
Yeah, yeah,
like he seems to dumb down as Shazam, which I did find kind of annoying. Like the whole thing
yeah,
with uh the thing about the wisdom of Solomon,
yeah, yeah.
right? And that was
Right,
funny, and it was funny, and I thought it was funny, like the way he was like the wisdom of Solo Man or the
right,
wisdom of Saruman.
right,
But then
right.
I was like, at no point does Billy Batson in his boy form
Seem
come
like an
across,
idiot like that.
yeah, come across as an idiot. He
Right,
seems like kind of the, you know, like the head of the kids. Like
right.
they all look
Yeah,
up to him and what have you, but he doesn't seem Yeah, he doesn't seem like an idiot. He doesn't seem goofy like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point. I hadn't quite thought of that. That's a really fair point. Yeah, that he is goofier as Shazam than he is as a kid, which doesn't make any sense. Because, like,
Right.
for instance, oh gosh, what's the youngest one's name? Um,
I don't remember.
I'm not sure, but and that's part of the problem too, is like the other family, other than Mary, the other family members kind of aren't,
Get lost.
yeah, they aren't really distinct enough.
Yeah.
But this fast one,
Yeah.
she's the youngest sister, like she's a super smart, sweet, innocent girl, and then that carries over when she becomes the
Mm-hmm.
part of the Shazam family, when she goes to her superhero form.
Yes. Absolutely.
She's
Right.
curious and smart and
Yeah.
sweet, and it comes through.
Yeah. Everybody else's like character traits that they have as a kid, like their best character traits come through. And I
Yeah.
guess you could say you can make the argument that like Shazam's best character trait is his heart,
Yeah.
right? And they
Yes.
do kind of point to that, like it's the wisdom for him lies within his heart, like knowing to like he split his power between his siblings without thinking about it, right?
Darla. The character's name is Darla.
Darla,
I had
there
to
you
look
go,
it
thank
up.
you.
Yeah.
Um, and
Right.
and
Yeah.
they make it a point to say that, but at the same time, you're like I don't think he ever strikes me as like the dumb one out of the family when they're kids.
True. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we're supposed to believe he's 18, he's aging out and all this
Yeah.
other jazz, and he can't figure out how to say Solomon.
Well, I don't know, man. I've got a 17-year-old boy in my life, and there are some things that you would think you would know just by existing in the world that he doesn't. So
I guess that's fair. Yeah, I guess that's fair. We learned Greek mythology in school at some point when I was growing up, so that I knew who Solomon was.
well,
Like,
yeah, I mean Solomon's from the Hebrew stories, but
right, right. Thank you. Hebrew stories.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
if the mythology aspect, like that
Right.
was something that I grew up with, whether it was Greek or what have you.
Right.
Um, it was part of what we were taught in cultural studies and
Right.
social studies. And
Yes, for sure. Yep. Reading the Iliad and Odyssey and all that stuff. Talking about, well, and being in Dungeons and Dragons was always an interest too, that added to the idea that, oh, hey, we should learn about mythology, or here's an excuse to read more mythologies because it comes up in Dungeons and Dragons stuff.
all the time,
Yeah.
right?
But yeah, oh, you're right though. I hadn't thought about that aspect. As a kid, back when before the internet and we had to do school projects, we'd go to the library and get out the encyclopedia, or the encyclopedia, or find books on mythology. I remember doing that
Mhm.
in elementary school. I don't know that that's a thing that kids do anymore.
I don't know that kids go to libraries anymore
Well,
in their free time. I used to go and check out books all the time from our library,
yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Like I read so much as a kid. We also didn't have 8 million channels on
Right.
TV and
Right.
special effects laden things and YouTube and
Yeah.
phones that you could watch a movie on or what have you. I mean, now I sound old, right?
Right. I
I sound
know.
like the old guy who's
Old
like,
guys yelling at clouds here.
but there is something to be said about that, right?
Yeah.
There's something to be said about the wonder of going into a library and going, I want to know more about this,
Yeah.
and picking up a book and reading something on it, right? Learning about what are the Greek gods? Like who was Atlas? Like they kept
Yeah.
referencing Atlas,
Right.
right? The daughters of Atlas throughout the movie were the kind of bad guys, kind of like whatever. And I mean, how many people watching it, and this is like a genuine thought, is like how many people watching it know who Atlas actually was as it relates to mythology?
Right. And I'm sure most people have encountered the image because it's a pretty famous image of him like holding the world on his back.
Yeah. Hmm.
But well, and I'll say despite what we're saying about having read a lot of Greek mythology 40, 50, 40 years ago, like I I don't remember there being a thing about the daughters of Atlas. Like I don't remember
Oh,
encountering
I
that
think that's
anywhere.
pretty much made up.
Yeah.
Like, I think that part is just made up in order to further, kind of the movie and those kinds of
Yeah.
things. But, you know, I thought the costume design for Zachary Levi was much better this time. It didn't look as styrofoam padded.
Right. It didn't look like there was a light bulb underneath his suit.
Right. And the rest of the family was great. Like
Yeah.
everybody did a great job. The kids and the adult actors, I thought they all did a really nice job. There was that, and it was so fast and so subtle in the movie about the the one that came out to the family.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like he's watching at the beginning of the movie, sitting on the
Right.
couch with the mom watching baseball, and he's like, yeah, I can see the appeal, and he's looking at the
Uh-huh.
picture of like the
Yeah.
sweaty baseball player,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, so there's gonna be a thing here.
Right.
Like you kind of thought there was gonna be a thing.
Yeah.
I think the nod to I think what I liked about what they did with it is they didn't make it into a thing. That it was when they all decided they had something to tell the parents, which was going to be that they were the
Superheroes. The
superheroes.
right.
He says, "I'm gay,"
Yeah.
and everybody kind of looks at him, and Zachary Levi's character goes, "Yeah, man, we know."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Really?" It's like, "Yeah."
Yeah.
And
And
then
the
they
parents
just,
too. The parents are like, yeah, we know. It's
yeah,
great. Yeah.
everybody's
Fine.
like, "Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all
Right.
know."
Which is that's how it's supposed to be.
Right, which is exactly how it's supposed to be, right? And I for a minute when we first saw that in the beginning, I thought, I wonder how this is going to be interwoven. Like, what is going to be the struggle here with this? Like, what is the social commentary going to end up being throughout the movie around this?
Yeah.
And the fact that it wasn't, the fact that it just became a quick announcement. The family was like, yeah, we know.
Yeah.
I thought, I liked that.
Yeah. For sure.
I liked that, you could have people who are arguing saying, well, that wasn't given enough, this, that, or the other. And I thought, no, the argument should be this is how it should be.
That it's just not a thing. It just
It's
is.
like it's
It's
your
like
it's
right.
it's who
Yeah. Yeah.
you are.
Right. Right.
And you're accepted and you're loved, and it doesn't matter. That was the message in that brief little moment that I feel like might have been one of the more powerful things that happened in the movie for me,
Yeah.
was just seeing that pure acceptance.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for that character who's got he's chubby, he's bigger, and
Mm-hmm.
there's all sorts of body
All
issues, and how do
sorts of
you
stuff.
all sorts of stuff, so in a cultural way that is that kid going to be accepted?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And there's that fear, that unknown, and
Right.
is he not going to be accepted? So for them to just be like, yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
I was like, that's great.
Yeah, totally agree. I think this movie does pretty well at depicting the idea of children who become adult-bodied superheroes, and the internal conflicts that they have with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, how would that be? I just think if you're going to try to embody that idea, and you're right about um Shazam being goofier than the kid,
Right. Yeah.
but there's something there, like that each of them they're kind of struggling with their powers, and how do we do this, and what does it mean, and we're not really sure of ourselves because they're kids.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just think there's something about the way that each of the characters, when they get superheroed, um and they're talking about it and they're in the lair, like absolutely, if you had a bunch of teenagers and suddenly they have a secret like room where they could go, I'm pretty sure they decorate it pretty much like that, right? With we're gonna label it as layer, and we're gonna make it our own, and like just that feels true to the story that they're trying to tell. Like, if you're trying to tell a story about kids that suddenly have superpowers, how would they react? I feel like
Mm-hmm.
they do a pretty good job of depicting that.
Yes, I would agree. And then, the other piece I liked about that was, I guess, the need for them to explore their own interests.
Yeah.
Right? That everybody kind of was like, they all found their own thing within the layer, and that they
Mm-hmm.
were kind of looking at like, one of them was exploring the doors to all the different places, and he kept
Yeah.
writing M for mature, E for everyone on like the
Right.
doors,
Yeah.
which is a very kid thing, like reaction to do.
Yes.
The other one who found the library but kept the library to themselves, and
Yeah.
Steve, the pen that wrote on its own when you asked
Right.
it questions.
Right.
And there was some great humor in there, like when, and I'm sorry, whoever the critic from the Chicago Tribune was, like, is either A, really suffering from like superhero movie fatigue, which I totally get, or B, has no sense of humor and is a soulless
Right.
harpy of a human being. Because
Oh.
the whole thing with the Steve the pen, and they
Right.
send the
The
letter to
letter.
the
Right.
Daughters of Atlas, and it's
Yeah.
recorded like
It's
everything throughout the whole
uh-huh.
conversation, and they're reading it, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're idiots. And it
Yeah.
was great, and it was fun.
And it kept going. It's one of those jokes that like I forget, is it Seinfeld or is it somebody else that talks about like if you just keep going, like you do something over and over again and it's funny and then it's sort of not funny. And then if you keep going long enough, it becomes funny again. That's
Hmm.
how I felt about that.
Yeah, it was
Like
good.
it
It was
just
good. I the Daughters of Atlas, I felt, were, for who they had playing them,
yeah.
I will say I thought were not as threatening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think well, and I felt that there was a couple of moments where I felt really bad for Lucy Liu. Like she had some dialogue that was she was given some dialogue that was
Same with
pretty
Helen
damn
Mirren.
cheesy.
Same with Helen Mirren.
Yeah, I don't know. It just really stood out to me when there was a moment or two where Lucy Liu had to be like super cheesy bad guy stuff. Like
Yeah, and
something awry, like I don't know. So that's tough to pull off.
mhm,
It's like what Harrison Ford reportedly said about the original Star Wars script. Like you can write this shit, but nobody can say it. Like
right. And it's tough, right? It's tough. Um,
yeah.
but I felt like they could have made them a little bit more menacing. I
Yeah.
mean, the
Yeah.
whole, like, they opened really well
Yes.
with them going in
Right.
and
Yeah,
taking
right.
out everybody in the museum, and Lucy Liu like whispering into people's ears, and then they just jumped from person to person, like
Right. That whole
spreading the
like I
whispers.
thought that moment, I thought, oh my gosh, is this gonna be some version of a zombie movie?
I was so hopeful.
Yeah.
I thought, this is great. Like, this is a really terrifying power. And then
Right.
she never really used it again.
Yeah.
Like, not in that way. Right.
Yeah.
And for as
Right.
angry as she was portrayed at being at humans, and as vicious as that power was, I was like, how did we miss the mark on using that as like the big weapon instead of the wooden glowy dragon?
Right. Yeah.
Like the wooden glowy dragon, I was like, eh. Here's my thought on the dragon aspect that we see in movies sometimes, or shows. Don't try and get too creative with dragons.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like, don't
yeah.
try to step too far out of bounds. Like, when we want to see dragons, we want to see dragons.
Yeah.
We want to see scales and fire and menace and everything else. And it looked like a Pokemon character,
Yeah.
kind
Kind
of,
of did. Yeah.
because it was
Yeah.
constantly glowing, and it was spitting blue fire. And I get it, like, there's, whatever. But at the end of the day, right, that's just one of those creatures from mythology. And I don't know everything about mythology, and I haven't played Dungeons and Dragons in years.
Right.
So there could very well be a wood dragon somewhere that I don't know about.
Yeah.
But when people are watching, like, for dragons, when we think we're gonna get a dragon, there's something you want, right? And
Yeah.
I think when you take too much creative license with something like that, it can be a little bit of a, like, the air comes out of the balloon just a touch, right? Just a
Right.
little bit.
Yeah. And I guess it had to be blue fire. I don't know what the blue fire was. It looked very much like the lightning. Like when the
Yeah, it was
lightning and the
like
blue
lightning. It
fire
was like the
connected, it
magic.
was hard to tell
I think it
what the
was. I think it was
some
the
sort of
magic,
magic. Sure. Yeah. And
right?
because the staff, it was like, wasn't the fire like the same color as the magic
Yes.
in the staff, the glowy
Uh-huh.
thing in the staff?
Yes.
Um, and I suppose a wood dragon would have trouble with actual fire. That wouldn't be a good combination, I don't think.
True. But then, make it
But if you're
scaly.
a magic creature, why? Yeah,
Yeah.
contradiction should be allowed.
Yeah. Just make it scaly. But at the end of the day, and I mean, really, at the end of the day with this movie,
Yeah,
like it didn't have the same budget from what I understand as a lot of the other like, big comic book movies. They specifically kept it at a little bit lower budget.
okay,
Which I think worked. At times, the special effects, like Lucy Liu on the Dragon, got a little hokey a couple times, and
sure,
you're like,
yeah,
here we probably should have spent a little more money. Um, but I don't feel like the movie was meant to center around special effects. I feel like the movie was meant to
right,
center around the relationships that were existing and the idea of growing up and loss and moving
yes,
on and everything
right,
else. And
right,
um
and found family and how
mhm,
powerful that is,
yes.
and just the emotion between um mom, I think her name's Rose, and Billy, especially, just like, of course you'll be part of us. Like there's no letting you go.
Yeah.
You're my son.
Yeah.
Like if that doesn't hit you at least a little bit in the feels, I don't know
Right.
what's wrong with you.
Yeah. Like how does that, like, unless you're just like, again, a soulless harpy that works at the
Right.
Chicago Tribune, right? How does that, like, do you not have any kind of experience with that in your life where you're just like, you've always thought, I don't know, it just, to give it 1 star is not fair. I think, my opinion, I think you've missed the point of this movie,
Yeah.
right? I think that if you're giving it terrible reviews, you're fatigued on superhero movies, and that's totally understandable.
Yeah.
I don't know what the fan rating is of it after the weekend.
Yeah,
I
I
haven't
don't know.
looked at that. I can't believe that this movie's made less over the weekend than friggin' Morbius did,
That's
though.
what he said. That's insane.
Right? That's
This movie is
ridiculous.
3 times better than Morbius, at least.
Way more than that.
Okay.
This movie is so much better than Morbius.
Yeah.
Morbius was such hot, wet garbage. Such hot, wet garbage. And this movie doesn't have the level of, dark gravity, I guess, that they
Right,
try
right,
to
right,
imbue with Morbius, and you know, so maybe the light-hearted
right. Yeah.
comedic aspect of it is a little bit more.
But again,
I
it's a
don't know.
story about kids who become
Mhm.
superheroes. Like
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense that it would be dark and brooding and blah blah blah. No, they're just
yeah,
trying to find their
no,
way in the world and figure out who they are, and that thing that teenagers have to do where they both want to cling to their family and become independent from it.
yeah,
And then you get the story of the lost boy, like the boy who's been rejected by his whole life by people that he loves, and he's scared.
yeah. I
Can we
will
talk a
say,
minute? Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead, buddy.
Oh, I was just gonna say I want to make sure we spend a little bit of time with Mary because I thought she was terrific.
Yeah, Mary was great. I was gonna say Mary, I thought, and I think that Mary Marvel as a character in the comics too is also great, right?
Yes. Yeah.
She's undergone a ton of stuff within the comics. Like you know,
Yeah.
she flips to Black Adam's side for a while in the comics and becomes like Dark Mary, um, or Black Mary, something like that. Seth Mary, Teth Mary, I don't know,
Yes, Mary. I don't
but
know.
yeah, I thought she was great in the movie too. I
And in
thought
the
they
new
had.
book, new champions of was it the new champions of Shazam, like where she kind of takes over the power.
Mhm.
Um, the couple ones of those I've read are really good, and she's trying to balance things as a college student and as a superhero, and she's got more power because they're not sharing all the power because she's kind of the only one left. And how
Right.
do you navigate that? Like it's interesting, good stuff. She's a terrific character.
Yeah.
Or in the was it the Vampires versus DC?
Mhm.
She was one of like basically two main saviors left.
Yeah. Yep.
Like she's a powerful, powerful character, and I think we didn't get to see a lot of the sort of physical powers of her, but we saw her as truly the centered and centering force of that family.
Sure. Yeah. I'll be curious with, you know, Flash coming out, because in the Flashpoint comics, right? Uh Billy Batson as Shazam has like, and the Shazam family has stood up to like Wonder Woman's onslaught,
Mm,
right? I'm curious to see how they work all that. Or like, what are
yeah.
we actually going to see in the Flash movie? Like we were talking about with Daryl yesterday, it was probably going to end up being like their opportunity to do a hard reset
Yeah.
inside of DC. Like
Right.
that's where everything's going to go away, and we're going to get a whole different like universe that makes sense. But we'll see. Before we give our rating on it, I think we should talk about the two post credit scenes.
Yes. So
Right?
again, spoiler alert here because
Yeah.
they're good.
Um, the first post credit scene I think was more important than the second one.
Yes.
Um, right. The first post credit scene, you see the folks from Task Force X go and they find again like what I thought was maybe an over the top, like kind of goofy, like version of Shazam
Shazam like shooting the bottles with his lightning.
shooting bottles with his lightning powers and definitely being like immature,
Yeah.
and they make him like an offer to be part of the Justice, and he's like,
Justice.
yes,
Yes.
yes, absolutely, yes, absolutely. And they're like, well, that was easy. And he's like, so how does it work being part of the Justice League, and doesn't Wonder Woman usually do this? And they're like,
Yeah.
no, no, this is the Justice Society. And he's
Right.
like, hold on a second.
Wait, I just want to be part of the one that Wonder Woman's in.
Yeah, but
Which,
it was
if you're an 18-year-old boy in that body, like 100% that's where you want to be, is wherever Wonder
sure,
Woman is. That was a great joke throughout the thing, throughout the
yes.
movie, about how clearly he's lusting after Wonder Woman because
Mhm.
he's 18. And yes, of course you do.
Right. But I think that the only thing about that post credit scene that I have to wonder is, was that post credit scene created prior to James Gunn taking over and wiping the slate, so to speak? So does it really have
Right.
any weight anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because we know that Black Adam is not going to be part of the new DC continuity and
Yeah.
everything else. Justice Society is something that has played a big part, but we also know that's not coming. So it was kind of one of those that was like, this was like more fan service
Sure. Because it was
than
setting
a
up the idea
prediction.
that Shazam could take on Black Adam,
Right.
that they would
Yes.
fight.
Yep. Yeah. And it set that up, and we know there's no payoff. And then the second post credit scene was uh the guy from the bad guy from the first one,
Right.
who
Mark Strong.
suddenly
Right. Yeah.
has both eyeballs.
Yes. Yeah.
He had both eyeballs, and
Well,
then the little,
budget constraints.
I mean, sometimes eyeballs grow back,
Right. Yeah.
as they do. And then the little worm guy that, if you read the comics, I can't remember his name, but he's a significant bad guy, and uh, but I felt that was more like comedy, right? Because they
Yeah.
had teased that in the end of the first Shazam movie, and then
Yeah.
obviously we got something totally different in this one, and then all of a sudden that little guy is back, and but the interaction was so funny,
Right.
right? He's like, it takes me, I crawl everywhere that I
Right. I
go.
don't have
It,
wings. I don't have wheels. I have to
yeah,
slither.
yeah, I slither, and it takes me a long time. He's like,
Right.
oh, there's one more thing I have to do, and he like crawls away.
Slay. Right.
And I thought that was kind of funny. It
Yeah.
wasn't like, does it further anything within Shazam? I don't know.
Right.
Um, but it was kind of funny. So the
But the
post credit
first
scene,
credit scene, the first post credit scene was legitimately funny.
yes.
Like the interaction between the two characters from Peacemaker.
Mhm.
I'm blanking on their character names, but they're
That's it.
hilarious.
Yes. They're super funny, and they're funny in Peacemaker. I mean,
Well,
they're
right. That's what I mean. Yeah, and maybe that's the thing where if you haven't watched Peacemaker, then you don't know who these two people are, and you don't know why they're bickering, and maybe it just seems like dumb bickering instead of like a continuation of the people that you've met in Peacemaker and why that's so funny. Maybe that's where it falls flat, I guess.
right.
We're back around to there's just too much homework for people to do to keep up with all this, which is understandable. But I thought that scene was with those two was hilarious.
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was good. All right, Dave. So let's wrap this up with our rating system.
Patented coffee and capes rating system of overwhelmed, whelmed, or underwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna go ahead and give this an overwhelmed, especially compared to my expectations, which were 0.
Right. Yeah. No expectations for this at all. I would say that I was overwhelmed as well. I it was a lot of fun. I'd actually go
Yes.
see it again. And it's one that I think is rewatchable. It has the ability to be
Absolutely.
rewatchable.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I think if you're out there and you're wondering, should I go see this Shazam movie? Yeah, absolutely go see it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, and you'll realize that most movie critics are idiots.
Or at least aren't invested. You know what? We're enthusiasts. We've said this from the beginning.
Yes.
We're not critics. We're enthusiasts. We like these stories. We want them to do well. We want them to be good. We're willing to tell you when we think they're not. But
Morbius.
Morbius, looking at you. Um, but we want them to do well. We're not professional critics. We love these stories and love that we live in a world where we get to see them on screen at pretty high quality.
Yeah. I do want to point out really quick before we hang up, I just had a thought. You know what would be great? A great use of Morbius in Marvel continuity.
Have him fight Blade.
Yes. Have him get staked by Blade.
Yes.
Okay. If you guys are listening out there,
Right. Make that happen.
just do it.
Just put us all out of our misery. Like some connected Morbius universe with
Just a
Vulture and what the hell ever.
Brief. It could be the opening scene of the new Blade movie where it's just like you got Jared Leto running for his life as Morbius, and then all of a sudden he just gets done in by Blade.
Yes. Even if it's just like CGI Morbius or Jared Leto. Like it could just be
at all. I don't give a shit. Just time to get rid of it.
Stake that guy. Get
it and get rid of it. Like call it a day. Don't reboot it. Such a weird character to bring to the screen.
Anyway, this is about Shazam 2 Fury
of that one
Gods.
Yes. Shazam 2 Fury of the Gods. Go see it.
Overwhelmed.
Totally worth it. Lots of
fun. Yep. You'll enjoy it. And if not, well, shame on you. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
Enjoy it. Let us know what you think. Hey, let us know what you think. Reach out on the socials or send us an email or if you know us personally, send us a text. That's cool too. Otherwise, coffeeandcapes.com. And thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yeah. Remember, guys, drink coffee, read comics, be awesome.
Absolutely. That's the tagline right there. That's our new tagline. I like it.
Drink coffee, read comics, be awesome, guys.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye, Kevin Costner.